So do we have anybody else in the audience to ask a question? There's a few at the back. At the back.
I would just totally screw with him.
Yeah.
Make him run off.
Andy Evans from Net Communities. Have you met or spoken to the guys that run World Golf Tour?
No.
Just say no.
Good question.
Has anyone got a
So the question is around that. Basically what they've done is they've taken gaming online in a much more... they've taken like World of Warcraft but created a golf game online that you just log into anywhere you like. Yeah?
This is my pick of the best stuff I've ever.
Well, no,
That's certainly something that other people are
they've got 1
doing.
million people play on the game already. You've never even heard of it. So clearly there's a massive revenue stream there for Ping to sell their golf clubs on there, for advertising around the course and all those kind of things. And it's, it's an online cloud computing web application that's going to build community and all those kind of things. And I personally feel that's a very big part of what's going to happen in the future. So I just find it interesting.
Yeah, well, I think gaming and virtual worlds are actually bigger. I mean, there are things in the Valley that we dismiss a lot. I mean, I think every time I see the venture capital numbers and I see that investment in virtual worlds went up, I'm like, what? Because I don't know a single person doing a virtual worlds company. In the US. And in the Valley, rather. And, it's just, I don't know anyone who spends time on virtual worlds, but clearly it's this huge, that's what's so...
That's because they don't go outside.
But that is what's sort of powerful about the web, and going back to this disintermediating gatekeepers metaphor. I mean, just because people in the Valley don't do this and don't see it as a big business, that no longer really matters when it comes to the web. So I think you're going to see tons of huge businesses emerge in gaming and virtual worlds and a lot of areas that people in the Valley don't get. But guess what? There's billions of people who live elsewhere.
What are the behaviours which kind of distinguish the good VCs from the bad VCs? Any horror stories would be amusing, and how are we going to look
Nix of VCs.
Horror stories not from London.
Right.
Not a bad idea.
Well, the awesome thing about VCs is who they are. You can describe something incredibly vividly and be really brutal, and they'll all laugh and go, oh yeah, everyone else does that. Every other firm does that. They have amazing ability to totally agree with you but not see it about themselves. But no, I think, I'll call out Sequoia. I think Sequoia, the degree to which they replace every founder is horrible. I know a couple of companies that are in Sequoia's portfolio now that have absolutely outperformed, companies that have been around a while that have really faced horrible odds and got no support from them and have outperformed and are doing really well now. And Sequoia still wants to replace the founders just because they feel like they just need to replace the founders. I think if you're building a business software company, maybe you need a sales guy at the helm. But if you're building a consumer web company, you don't. And I think, we can all agree, if Mark had been ousted from Facebook, it would be an incredibly different company now. First of all, it would have been sold. It just would have been a completely different company. So that's the biggest thing that sort of drives me insane, this sort of need for some sort of grown-up. We saw it happen with Google, and, does anyone really think Eric Schmidt runs the company? It's like a puppet figurehead. It's ridiculous. So, how many people did I offend there? 5, 8? Am I going to be able to go home? But yeah, that's probably my biggest pet peeve. I think the other thing is venture capitalists who try to pump too much money into companies and then are the first ones to cut bait and run when the economy shifts. And I think that's really what hasn't happened this time around because everyone lived it in the first time around. And, I think David Z from Greylock is one of my favorite venture capitalists because entrepreneurs he works with just love him. He found a way to do Dig, even though they only wanted $1 million. And everyone was like, there's no math where this works out to be a good investment for you that's worth this much of your time when you can only do a couple deals a year. But he just said, I believe in the guys and it'll work itself out. And at the same time, he came in and invested in Facebook at a $500 million valuation, and everyone said he was completely insane. Obviously, he's going to make a lot of money from that. So I think he's a great example of someone who can see it from both sides and just kind of makes a good gut call without trying to play it safe. I think most VCs forget that they're in a risk capital business and they don't take risks. And that's why the angels have become as powerful as they have in the Valley, because they're willing to write small checks and take risks.
Any more questions?
Hi, my name is Farhan, and I don't represent any company. I'm just one of those hanger-oners.
You just walked in on
That's right.
Not so early.
I know that was a good talk, though.
expect to see in pre-hours of a strip club. It's a good talk about the web.
So my question is about more, I guess, the social entrepreneurial side in San Francisco. There's a big nonprofit social entrepreneur scene. Kiva is a great example of something that's come out that's hugely popular. Are there any other examples of that, or like how does that affect or impact like Silicon Valley people? Do they even think about it?
It's really small. And I have to say, over the summer, doing my book tour and going to 15 different cities in the US, I heard more about social entrepreneurship and people utilizing the web for nonprofits in those cities than I ever have in the Valley. I think Kiva is a great example, but they're really unique. Sean Parker's new company, Causes, is run on Facebook and is another example. But people, and I don't think it's that people don't want to give back, because I hear a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with this because they don't just want to put money in a black hole, but they don't know how to give. And frequently these guys came from really modest means, and so all of a sudden they have all this money, and it's very confusing. But I think it's just they get so focused on building a company and running their business that they just don't think about it. Like, they tend to tune anything out that isn't this, and so they're not thinking about it. And so then it's always this tricky thing too, with social entrepreneurship of people want giving to be more startup-like, but does that mean you do a for-profit? Does that mean you do a non-profit? And you have to make that decision at the beginning. And so the kinds of people that really would get the web enough to really leverage it and really build a powerful social media sort of startup-like company that would really be transformative probably don't want to run a nonprofit. And so it's a tricky thing. I don't think there's much of it. I mean, one of the first stories I ever did when I first moved to Silicon Valley was called Stingy Valley, and it was about like the percentage of money. If you look at absolute dollars, the Valley does give a good amount, but if you look at the percentage of how much people are worth and what they give, it's smaller than any other major city in the U.S. because in other places you have this old money, and so people are grown up knowing how to give. And in the Valley, people get it all of a sudden and are confused, and so they just ignore the question. One person who's actually done a great job is James Hong, who started Hot or Not. He started this thing called like 10 over 10 or something, 10 over, I don't know. Anyway, for every 10,000 he made in a year over, say, 100,000, he would give 10% of it to charity. So it's like they're kind of math geeks, so a lot of times they'll structure it that way. I have another friend who was an angel investor who had put some money into Google, was a Netscape guy. So it's like I remember having breakfast with him for the day of the Google IPO, and he was just like, basically all the Google money is just going to charity. We just have more money than we have a jet. We have vacation homes. I don't even know what to do with this money anymore. So he just gave all of his Google money to charity, and blindly picked one out of a phone book.